Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Licensed Psychologist Now What? This is your host, Dr. Liliana Garcia. And today I have a very special episode that I wanted to share 5 recommendations I have for any of you that are looking to hire a coach to help you bring your medicinas. You know that this podcast is all about following the journey of my fellow psychotherapists and healers that are embarking to bring forward their medicinas, to follow their path in life, and to follow whatever it is that they're feeling called to do. So, this episode is if you're looking for help, here are 5 recommendations and things that I think are important to share in that journey. So, let's begin. Before I share, I just wanted to say that my own journey of finding my different teachers and mentors and coaches, some of these are written because of that experience and what I've seen out there in the field. So I've been in the online business kind of world since 2019. I started technically at the end of 2018, and I've been to many conferences and many things around that. And even before, I was one of those avid readers and going to retreats about manifestation, personal growth, and all that. So this experience is not only coming from that, but it's also being informed of what I've seen has been helpful for me and what I think is important that you consider, especially if you are a person of the global majority, meaning also a person of color. So that is very important because the coaching world, it's majorly influenced by whites, and in that sense, kind of more of this majority of thinking that it's including colonialism, capitalism, and that it's still rooted in many oppressive practices. And that's another subject on another day, and no harm or anything about my fellow white folks that are listening. As you see, I also am a mixed person in many ways and also consider myself Boricua. So it's important, but I think it's important that we talk about these things and continue to dismantle the ways privileges and white privilege and other privileges continue to impact us and in the coaching realm. And privilege is not only about our skin tone, that is a big one though, but it's also about many other privileges about sex or gender identification, financial or socioeconomical status, family. There's many layers to privilege. Again, that's another episode. But for today, let's focus on this and let's start with the first one. So the first one is finding someone that is trauma informed and has experience working with folks that have trauma. And when I say that, I know that right now we're in this boost of talking about nervous system healing and many even certificates, coaching certificates or courses, or even just a class on, how to heal your nervous system. And that's not what I'm talking here, because that in itself is just one way of seeing it. What I'm talking is someone that not only understands that, but also has experience, because there's a difference of having the logic of how it is to help others that they have experienced trauma. And there is a big difference when you have experience working that people that are experiencing triggers with you in sessions that are getting some trauma responses right there and then or during the week, and you help them navigate those things. Is when you have that experience of putting all this theory of nervous system healing and all that into practice, that's very important. And I'm going to add here that aspect of having a general understanding about generational traumas and systemic racism and cultural traumas and many of that. I'm not the expert in all those big topics, but at the same time, I continue to find ways to continue to learn. So having that apertura, it says in Spanish, like having that opening and to learn more and to continue, to be a lifelong learner. I think that's very important. And why is that? One of the things that I have seen, not only in myself, but also in the clients that I have worked in the coaching, helping them bring their medicinas, is that is not necessarily motivation. It's not necessarily will. It's not necessarily that you don't have ideas and great ideas. A lot of times the things that get in the way are trauma related patterns and responses and triggers that sometimes we're not even aware. Like, for example, recently I was working with someone and they want to bring something out in the world, and we continue to explore what's the resistance with the resistance. And part of that, it has to do with the women in her family and how they did not had a voice. They couldn't express themselves. So being able to bring something into the world that is about expressing yourself is kind of like there's a resistance there, because it's not only yours that you're carrying, it's these legacy burdens that you're carrying. So having someone, in this case like me, but any other person that is knowledgeable in this and helps you, then not only can identify it and then can actually bring some practices to help you overcome it, or even refer you out if you need to go to like more of a therapist to kind of do a deeper exploration of that. So, and I think this is so important, because what happens is when we are not aware of how our traumas informed our businesses or our motivation or our procrastination and all those things, a lot of times those things have a very negative connotation. And then that perpetuates this internalized way of oppressive way that we see ourselves, that we're not good enough, that we can never do things. It just perpetuate those schemas and beliefs that are then going to hold us back. And yes, I'm talking about CBT. It's not my cup of tea, but it comes handy. And this is one way. When we continue to believe that we cannot do something, then we are not going to do it. We also need a little bit of that confidence. It's not that we have to be completely confident, but we need a little bit of it. So that piece is very, very important. I think that's basically what I want to share about that. So number 2, has experience helping folks follow their own intuition and path, as opposed to trying to fit you into a mold. This one, it's so important. A lot of people in the coaching world, and even in the therapy world, I remember when I was a newbie, we learn all these models, we learn all these manualized treatments, because now it's the evidence-based, and even EMDR has like a manualized, you do things differently, but there's steps that you follow. And most therapy models that are evidence-based, they do have those steps, because that's how they were able to do those research and do those experientials to be able to gather data and say that is helpful. So whenever, and even seasoned therapists, and they're learning something new, a lot of times they're just following by the book, that standard. And we're trying to fit a mold. We're trying to put the clients into what the theories and the research is saying that is helpful. And oftentimes we forget to see the bigger picture. We forget to help and see that not everything applies to everyone. We forget to consider what are the factors that inform that evidence base or that even style. We forget to also see what's your style and are you in alignment with that style as well. Like I remember when I was doing EMDR at the beginning, and I was like just trying to follow in because I even thought of getting certified. And I was going to the weekly, or I think it was monthly, group consultations and following all those recommendations. And I remember I had someone that I was seeing, and I was starting to notice that whenever I was just pushing through, because the way I got trained, and I know there's different ways, but the way I got trained, and it was like before even EMDR was famous. I did that like back in I think it was like 2014 or something like that. Now it's a big thing. And, everybody, sometimes people call like, I just want EMDR. That was before. And that moment, the way I got trained is like, yes, you do several sessions of prepping the person, talking about the safe place, resourcing, but then you go straight into processing, because that's where the quote unquote magic happens. And I was doing that. I was just following what my mentors and teachers were telling me. And what I was noticing is people were going into like a down a spiral, being super triggered to the point that it was kind of debilitating. Because I think there is like a threshold that we're not talking. And I love using this little toy that I have here. So I'll put it for those that are just listening. I have this toy that expands and contracts. And when it expands, it creates kind of like a ball, and there's that space in between. And that's kind of like that idea of that threshold. So And sometimes it goes over and then we don't have anything. And when we push too hard and we just know from the nervous system, when our bodies perceive a threat that is imminent, that we cannot survive it, then we can go into a freeze response or even a collapse response. So are we really helping people to just process it if they're going straight there? And not everybody takes a long time to go there, especially depending on their own nervous system, their own trauma histories, and all of that. Some people can go very fast into a freeze and or collapse. Thank God I have never seen a collapse response. And I hope at the same time, if I do, I feel like I have enough training and experience under my belt to deal with it, but it's not something that we enjoy because someone can just look like, first of all, they can feign or something. We might have to call 911. But besides that, it can take them a long time to get out of there because that feels for many like a cocoon, even though sometimes there's activation, but for many it can feel like a cocoon is like, leave me alone. And they're like dissociated, they're like depersonalization, derealization. There's all these things that can happen. So I was seeing that the more I kept going and following the protocol, like whatever, like 3 sessions of preparation and all that, then going straight to processing, because they kept saying, Lydiana, but you need to process. When you process, that's going to go. That was a push. That also happened when I was practicing trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, TFCBT, with kids, like on session 6 or 7 right now. Don't quote me. I remember it was like, okay, start talking about the narrative. And I'm like, some of them, I mean, there's also the part that I was like, I don't know if I feel ready to start hearing all these things. And that was never addressed from supervisors. Let's just be honest. For most of from most supervisors, it's kind of like we're expected that we can hear all that, right? That's another day, another subject. But I was noticing the same, that not everybody had that threshold and contain supportive container. A lot of those treatments and therapies, in order to get them into being evidence-based, a lot of them were done with people that had more like a simple trauma. And what I mean with that is not necessarily complex trauma. So, or with people of color. And that was my majority. I was working mostly with Latinx communities and children that came from immigrant parents, first gen, with no documents and poverty and so many other factors that were beyond just individual trauma. They were collective traumas as well. So the same happens to us when we're bringing our medicinas. We have a threshold as well, and sometimes we're doing that, and that is or we're the main provider for some reason, or like if there are other pressures that are happening. There's family pressures, there's leaving pressures, which is another episode that I want to do about financial struggles that therapists also and healers go through that we don't talk enough. And a lot of people think because we have these degrees and all that, that we're wealthy and we're well, but a lot of times it's not. So I want to have like a raw and real conversation about that one day. But all those things, like if you don't have any business background like me, well, now kind of I do, but when I started, a lot of those things kind of continue to like block you and get in the way, right? And if the person that's seen and helping you is trying to fit you into a mold of step 1, this is what we do, step 2, this is what we do, session 1, session 2, or and that, and it's not considering your own personal situation, that is really hard. One way to perhaps ask them to find out is to ask them, like, have you worked with people that you help them to do things completely different from you, like not following any of your path? And how is that for you when you work with someone that it's maybe not doing the traditional way? Or how do you feel when somebody has an intuitive hint of doing something different from what you recommended? How do you handle that? Because we are our own person, but we're not our own person. We have our ancestors, we have our guides, we have all this. That's my bias idea of it. But I think you kind of know, and your body can tell. And there's a difference from, oh, this doesn't feel safe, and you're, more from like hypervigilant kind of aspect versus intuition. But if you're very intuitive and you have that, and you have built a connection with your inner wisdom, and you feel like that strategy or sending that email or that copy or doing that, whatever recommendation doesn't sit well, and you don't feel like you can share that with your coach, that's a huge red flag. That's a huge red flag. So I would definitely say exploring and asking them, how do they foster intuition? How do they foster differences? How do they handle when you're not in agreement with what they're recommending? Like that kind of stuff. Recently I had a situation that I joined like a detox program with someone that I thought initially, because when I interview them, I thought initially that they were gonna, you know, follow along. Long story short, my body was not reacting. I was like, my body's screaming no. And when I kept bringing that, the person kept saying, like, you just have to kind of like push through. That's part of the detox symptoms. And I'm like, I'm not a newbie in detox. And I know there's detox symptoms, but it's beyond the discomfort. It's not that I was like, I don't like how I feel. Sometimes there's pain involved in doing things. Like right now, as I'm writing a book, there's pain involved in writing the book. Like sometimes there's writer blockages and all that. But there's a difference from feeling this is not good for me. And the person was not able to hold that. They try to look for something alternative, but not really. And my body kept saying no, 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 and is following that. And it takes so much courage, especially if you're like me and you come from families and generations that have been oppressed, that they have not been valued, like their voice. So speaking your truth. And then if you come from families that you have to like abide and you have to just fit in and you couldn't speak your truth, when you start speaking your truth, even to advocate for you, I still sometimes like I get nervous, I get shaky. I feel like, what if they don't like this? It takes a lot of courage, but it's also the path. And probably that was the path that I had to take, another experience of me learning to speak my voice. And the same thing I recommend you, like in this journey of bringing your medicinas, is your medicinas, that it's, I would say, is your, but at the same time via you. And a lot of that knowledge is coming beyond theories, is coming beyond sometimes even experience or doing it. And if you're connected with your ancestors and with your guide, it's just flowing through you. And is this codes that you continue to decode to continue to unleash more and more of it. And the more that you do it, the more it comes through you, the more flows through you. So it's an experience that is happening via you. So the other person will never completely understand you. So super long explanation, but just to reiterate about the importance that find someone that will respect you in your own intuition journey, in your own making decisions, and that if you disagree, you can share it, and that they won't take it or try to fit you into the mold of what they think it should be. Number 3, find someone that you feel safe with. This is a big one. This is so important. And when I say safe, I'm not talking that necessarily like it's someone like it's a cool kind of like a friend and all that. Someone that you feel safe to share these things. Like when you have like dabble a little bit within it, the response is kind of like not pushing with resistance or pushing you away, and being able to encourage you to feel safe in whatever style. Like I know for me, someone that feels safe, there's an energy field that I cannot necessarily explain, that I just sense it. But beyond that, it's also their approach. I don't do well with pushy coaches or mentors that are in your face. Like I feel like I have good enough auto like self-motivation. I prefer someone that it's kind of like a space holder, someone that can witness, someone that can validate whatever I'm going. And at the same time, with love and respect, bring things forward. Like and I see this resistance or whatever in a loving way. And there's a time and date for that. If they're starting from the get-go like that and we haven't built a relationship, I'm already like, you have not earned kind of like your right to say things. And even though I'm paying for them to be the coach, I still feel like there has to be some kind of building a relationship so I can feel safe enough to completely open and completely work through. Because what I think ultimately in the work of bringing their medicinas, one of the things that it's very important is to help identify the blockages and release them and find ways to manage the ones that you can release, because there's some that you cannot release. So how can you manage it and work around it? Like, for example, having kids. Sometimes there's things, and it's not that the kids are a roadblock. And at the same time, there's things like, kids get sick. You have responsibilities with them and they don't sleep and all these kind of things that you cannot necessarily release it unless you find a babysitter or whatever. But it's more about how do you manage it? Like, how do you work around it? And that, I think, it's important. So being able to find someone that you feel safe will be so much helpful to go and explore that. Number 4, has similar standards and values regarding work and general life. So when I was looking for my own mentors and coach, I initially just looked for someone that had expertise in whatever I wanted in that moment, was to learn about digital business, right? But then I started being like, wow, this person is not taking into account that I'm a mom, that I'm a Latina mom. And when I say it's not taken into account, not everybody has to take everything into account. What I mean is what they're sharing comes with so much privilege and so much like dismissing of all these other things that I have in my life that it's not going to be helpful, because again, it's trying to fit me into that mold. So finding someone that has similar values for example, one of my values in bringing my medicinas is not to do it in a martyr way, not to do it in a boss lady, work hard, hustle, work hard, play hard, hustle way. I don't want that anymore. I'm in a stage in my life that I am more into finding like a natural rhythm. And the more that I keep connecting with the earth, the more that it makes sense. There was a reel that I saw that had a line that said, nature is not working 100% at 100% of the time, and right now, as I'm recording this, is the day before the fall equinox, and it's that transition into the earth and places in our world, in the planet earth, that are going to start being more, fall and winter. And that's part of it. That's part of that. So that's one of my biggest values when I look for someone, is someone that is not going to push into that hustle, that is also going to value when I have to rest, that is going to be flexible with things. Because as a mom, flexibility is one of the things that I have to practice. And now that I have 2 kids, flexibility is very important. Like, I'm here and I could get a call right now that I have to go and pick up my daughter, and I have to let go of everything or find ways to move it around. That has happened before. And I bet if you're a mama or a caregiver with an elder or someone, that has happened to you as well. So that's another one, flexibility. I also value sustainability and finding ways of, like a gentle and loving approach and respectful approach. So there's these things, and you can find a value kit online. The previous episodes with Sophia, she does have some great kind of like sheets to explore your values, but in general, like, it's kind of that. And I think that's very important, because there will be days that you might find and encounter some resistance, and that person might push you or might say things that are out of alignment with you. And yes, like, this third recommendation was like, find someone that you feel safe with, and the previous one was about not fitting into a mold, so you can speak up your mind. But ultimately, if that is one of their biggest value, to hustle or to be a boss lady or to whatever, then they're going to push through, they're going to push that to you, most likely. It takes a lot of practice not to. And even in myself, like I am very clear when I work with someone, I am not into that. So if somebody wants someone that is a hustler and like just get it done, I'm not their person, because when I see and I take into consideration the things that they're going through, I might just be like, this is not a time for you to push. This is a time for you to rest, find support, and all that. And if the person just wants to hustle and push through, that might not be the best advice for them. And the last one, number 5, wants to see you succeed, is invested in you. Not from a caregiver or a savior perspective, and that's very important. The savior complex and the archetype, and that's another episode. But when you are like looking for a coach, look for someone that is really invested in you, invested in your growth, that wants the best from you, not from a money perspective, so then they can get testimonials, so then they can, but more from a human connection. And that's also my bias about that is a value for me. So take that. But I think it's important that when we look for someone, we feel like, and we trust them, that we feel like we're in great hands. And one of the things that for me is feeling in great hands is having someone that wants also the best for me, that has the best interest for me, but it's not coming from a savior. And I'm not building that. I want to use the word codependent. It's a strong word for this, but that dependency on them, because they know so much. And now I have to they're my savior. That sometimes can happen also in therapy or in coaching relationships. And that's not what I think is best, because then it puts you again in a lower position. And to bring your medicinas, I see it as a way of you getting into where's where kind of like your role, where's your spot, so you can reclaim all of it and you can stand strong into your both feet if you're able to walk, or and however that makes sense for you, like strength, stand strong, sit strong, be grounded into your truth, into your medicina, so you can continue to bring them into the world, and not looking for somebody else to dictate a savior. It's someone that sees you for the powerful person that you are, and that sees your amazing medicina, and that supports that and wants that into the world. So those are my 5 recommendations when you're looking for a coach. As I am transitioning and ending this episode, I want to say I am opening the books. I have a few spots for one-on-one coaching. Well, when I'm recording this, I don't know when you hear it, and but I have some openings for one-on-one coaching, as I will hold the launch for the group coaching that I do, that also includes some individual, the Rooted and Rising coaching program or mentorship program. That one I'm holding it because I am very busy writing the book, and again, I'm not a hustler, push through. I have prior practice. I have the book that is taking a lot because it's a healing journey for me, and I'll share in another episode. But I also have my family and some other things that I'm doing, smaller things. So I'm holding that. It looks like right now more like January 2024. But in the meantime, I love doing this, and I don't want to stop helping others bring their medicinas into the world. If you're interested to it, just send me a message and to my email, info@thebeyondresilience.live.com. And some things I'll share, 4 things that I think are important for me when I'm doing this work. 3 things. One is I really love to focus on releasing the blocks that are getting in the way. And a lot of times those can be generational trauma, cultural traumas, childhood adversity or childhood traumas, continuing in life, exploring the stress levels, finding ways of managing how to, life, like if you have kids and you have a full-time job and all those things, like, and situations at home, is like really getting a snapshot of what's happening. And what are the things that we can help find some support so you can release some of the burden of that? What are some of the other things that you can continue to do on your own if you have the capacity, or perhaps in therapy, finding someone to go in a deeper journey if that's needed. And so that way, once you continue to clear those blockages, then the path becomes clearer. The path becomes clear, and the path will become clear as you walk on it. But sometimes we walk and there's a huge roadblock. So that's one of the things that I think it's pivotal in my coaching style. And that comes from my over 15 years of experience working with folks that have been impacted by trauma, including cultural traumas, lower socioeconomical status, immigration, and first gen, and yeah, so many things. The second one is that I am very practical. One of my great skills that I have accrued with this online business is that I consider myself to be good with technology, but I'm a very fast learner, and I have learned during this last 4 or 5 years on how to optimize business, how to make it so, like, how to create a landing page, how to like connect that to a Calendly or software so people can make a booking, how to integrate so people can pay you, how to help you with, automatizations, like sending automized emails and stuff and all that. So that way, simplifying the things that you don't need to be and do with each person. So you release more of the time that you would invest in all that and make it more efficient. Besides that, I've also done a podcast. So I have the knowledge on how to start a podcast, how to run a podcast. I also did my first retreat, which I have a promise episode on sharing that journey. I co-hosted it with Natalie Gutierrez this last June 2023 in Puerto Rico. So I also have that experience on how to, and we organized it all ourselves. We did not have any assistance, so I can help with that if that's something that you're interested in. I've also done master classes online. I've sold digital courses. So if you have, in those kind of areas, those are kind of areas that I have experienced. And the last thing is, which I've shared, I come not only from this trauma-informed, but a very supportive. And I feel like it's important to say that it's BME. I have a strong line of ancestors that not only survive, but I have healers, I have teachers, I have space holders. And though that medicine runs deep, and I am devoted to unlocking them and releasing my own blockages. I'm doing tons of work, continue learning to continue to release that so I can continue to be more of a clear channel, and information can be channeled via me, which is a newer area that I'm exploring and reclaiming, which is part of my different, I don't want to call psychic abilities, but my different, seer and different abilities that I have shut down for the longest. So when you work with me, you're not only working with me, you come from my line of ancestors, and they include people in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, and Boriken as the most recent, with lineages coming from different areas of Africa, and the indigenous Tainos, also from different areas of Spain, mostly in the north, and Portugal. So, and probably so much more. I'm also into Akashic Record, so I come with this knowledge from my soul. I've also done work to explore. And when I say I've done work, I don't want to say, like, sometimes that word, it's taken out of context. Like, I'm very curious and very interested on how to continue to do soul healing for myself, releasing burdens from previous lives and things that I'm carrying, and working with my soul as well. So the more that I can continue to connect with my soul, then it makes sense. So it's not only my ancestor, earth family, but also my soul family and where I come from. So just sharing that piece. And if you're interested, again, just sending an email, info@thebeyondresilience.life.com, and going from there. And then I will be most likely able to share with you the different packages that I have. And I cannot wait to, if this is something that you're feeling called, that you answer the call and to work with you. Thank you so much. I hope this was a helpful episode on some tips on how to find a coach. And until next time, take good care. Bye.